Our first guest spent 5 years pitching in the big leagues for the Tampa Bay Rays. And then in 2016, he was released by the Chicago Cubs organization. And just a few months after that, he became the Dodgers pitching coordinator. And I would say this man is on the fast track because earlier this spring, he was named the Dodgers' new general manager. Let's hear it for Brandon Gomes. Our next guest joined the Dodgers Major League staff 10 years ago. He has already been honored as the Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year in baseball. And earlier this year in January, he was named the Vice President of Player Performance for the Dodgers. It's Brandon McDaniel. All right, so we have Brandon and Brandon here, so I don't know how we're going to do this, but Brandon Gomes, I'll start with you. When you were playing, Brandon, did you always one day envision yourself possibly joining a front office, or was there something that maybe happened along that way that steers you toward where you are today?
I wouldn't say there was a definite interest right from the get-go. It was probably more towards the end of my career, starting to get into some of the analytics and understand pitch characteristics, and you know, I was sent up and down what feels like 1,000 times. So trying to understand the moves behind that. And, you know, as my career progressed and it was pretty clear that I was no longer very good, I was like, okay, this could be something of interest. So when I was with the Cubs in AAA, it was basically a coach towards the end. It was untenable to watch on the mound, so you know, trying to like mentor some of the younger guys, and then when I got released, it was like, okay, let's figure out what we want to do next, and that's where I just started making calls and ended up contacting Andrew, and then went from there.
And here you are today as the general manager of the Dodgers, and I know Orel wants to ask some questions too, but I want to get your story as well, Brandon McDaniel, B-Mac, Brandon Mac, whatever we want to call you, because I read a story where you said you didn't look like you do now back when you were graduating high school. How much did that influence where you are today?
Yeah, I think quite a bit. Like, I loved baseball, played all the way through high school, then was lucky enough to go on and play in college. Also was playing football at that time too, and like got really heavy into lifting and gaining weight, which was like what you're supposed to do at that time, not knowing really like the long-term effects, you know, on my health, let alone how my baseball career would be from it. And then okay, first time. And then, so when I got to college, I realized, like, hey, I'm gonna have to lose like some weight just to play the sport, and that's when it kind of took me down the route of like physical education, and then ultimately like exercise science, learning how the body works, how to move, how to eat better, and then you know, similar to like Gomer, I think I got to a point in my college career where I was like, all right, this is gonna be it, and I want to go back and give it to somebody else.
BG. How did you learn how to scout? Did it come from playing and watching games, or did you go to scout school? How did you all of a sudden scout? And then now you're hiring scouts, and you've learned to a point where analyzing a game is completely different than analyzing it as a pitcher.
Yeah, it was very much just watching the game, observing, asking questions. You know, watched plenty of video on myself and opposing hitters when I was playing, so it was kind of a natural occurrence, and just learning kind of things that popped to my eye and getting the thoughts from other people that I really respect in the game. So it was kind of a combination of a bunch of different things. And no, there was no scout school. I'm not even sure scout school exists anymore. We're actually
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem.
Shows
Younger members of the staff and different members of the different departments to go out and evaluate and see what it looks like on the field and how difficult of a task that is.
B-Mac, we had a very short spring training this year, relatively, as someone who has a background in strength and conditioning and vice president of player performance. What concerns did you have coming into this season after a short spring?
I don't think I've ever been like a part of a team where we were able to contact people for so long. And so we went 90 days or 99 days, however long the lockout was, without being able to have an idea of what any of our players have been doing. And we'll go 2 weeks sometimes in the off season, and they'll look completely different, sometimes good, sometimes bad. And so this was a little nerve-wracking to try to figure that out in a matter of hours before we reported to spring training. And then ultimately, like, we've never had a 3-week spring training, and so more looking at from what was our opportunity. And I think we found some things out this spring that we can carry on into future springs that were really helpful. And there's obviously things that we'll want more time with as we get it moving into the next spring training.
I'll follow up with BMAC. There's so much going on in the field that the fans know about as far as the data and the spin rate and all the different things that they get back in the front office. What goes on in the training room? I know you've been at the forefront of like charting workloads and different things. How has that really changed over the years?
Yeah, I think like we've always...
Don't give the secret sauce though.
Trust me, I don't even know if I could explain it if there was one. But, the big thing is that baseball has so much data. And a lot of that data is on the scoreboard. And so while I think the world is going one direction, the sports world is going one direction with the way they look at data, the way they look at workload, I try to surround myself and spend more time with people like you, Orel, or people that played in the past of understanding maybe some of the challenges they went through, maybe some of the ways they work to get their velocity in a natural way, to get exit velo or launch angle in a natural way. And now we're trying to incorporate just more natural motions into the way that we train people. And then, from a workload standpoint, my rule is if you're an efficient mover, you're going to have a lot more opportunity for workload. And if you're not an efficient mover, we're not going to be able to use you as much.
Brandon Gomes, tonight is game 72 of 162. Just had a great series in Atlanta, an exciting win last night to take 2 out of 3 in that series. In first place right now, leading the Padres by 2 games. How would you assess where your team is at through 72 games?
Anytime you're in first place, we're happy about that. I think the positive thing is, despite a decent amount of injuries, we're hanging on, playing pretty good baseball. I don't think we've played our best baseball yet. I think the last 6 games, the Cincinnati and Atlanta series, I thought we played really good baseball. Our lineup up and down was like really grinding out the starting pitcher. We caught the ball, we ran the bases well, and our starting pitching and bullpen has been, they've been fantastic all year. So we're in first place, which is great. And the positive thing is, I don't think we've actually hit our stride yet in playing the best that we can.
BMAC, I don't think the audience would know how early you arrive, what it's like to get people healthy again, the pressure you feel on a daily basis when there's more than just 1 or 2 that are hurt. Can you give them a little rundown of your day?
Yeah, typically I'm on the road with the team, and going to Colorado with the elevation, we kind of made the decision to come back and bring most of our rehab guys back to LA. That way they weren't there in kind of the conditions that aren't conducive to recovery. So we have 9 guys here right now that unfortunately are on the IL, and we started this morning, no game day here obviously, but 9 a.m. with 30-minute blocks with all 9 guys, and ran them all the way through till 4 o'clock. Like Kevin Pillar, I just saw walking out. He'd been here for about 6 hours with all the work that he's been doing. And then on a regular day game, when we get here on Thursday and the team comes back, we'll be here at 11 o'clock kind of prepping for the day, and those rehab players will start showing up about 11:30, 12 o'clock and get all their work done before the game starts.
Without giving a name, can you give us a rundown on a guy rehabbing, what his day entails usually?
Yeah, one of the big things that comes up is nutrition. And so they're going to meet with our chefs and our dietitians on a daily basis, take the supplements that are going to promote recovery, and then ultimately we're going to get them on some type of meal plan to put them in the best position where they need to gain weight, lose inflammation, whatever they need. We try to tailor that to them. They're going to spend a good amount of time, depending on the injury, in the training room, working with our physical therapists, our athletic trainers, our chiropractors. We have a ton of modalities in there. The Dodgers have great resources, obviously, so anything that we need that's going to get a player back on the field a day earlier, we're going to make sure that we have that for them. Strength and conditioning is a huge part. Not only do we want our players to be out of pain, but we want them to return to the field as quick as possible, and we think we can kind of like narrow the margins and get guys back on the field quicker than maybe other organizations, because we can get them in shape and feel comfortable about putting them back in the game. And then ultimately, when they're ready, we have 3 hitting coaches here that do a great job, and three to four, depending on how you look at it, pitching coaches that sit down, and we get very specific with them on the things that they need to do in their throwing programs, their hitting programs, their running progressions, their defensive work. Last year with our former shortstop, we spent a ton of time while he was out with a broken hand just trying to fix the positions he would get into field of baseball.
BG, we heard BMAC talking about the injuries, and I know a lot of fans out there, they're certainly excited the team is in first place, but the reality is over the last couple of weeks, we've seen Walker Buehler go on the injured list. We've seen Andrew Heaney again with the shoulder. You lose Daniel Hudson to the season, unfortunately, with that ACL injury, and we're still unsure about Blake Trinan's return. Do all of these injuries change the conversations, change the discussions you're having with Andrew, the rest of the front office, with the trade deadline looming in 5 weeks?
Yeah, we're constantly assessing and evaluating the team, how we're doing, the needs, and then also what's coming up, whether that's in the minor leagues or the guys that are currently on the IL, how they're progressing. So I think over the coming weeks leading up to the deadline, we have some really good players on the IL. We have Dustin May and Canely and Trinan and Mookie, and there's a lot of guys that should be coming back hopefully sooner than later. So we'll be assessing all of that, getting reports, seeing how everybody is feeling and what the projected return to play time is, and then it'll help guide the decisions. And we're constantly trying to get better and make sure we're in the best position to win a World Series. So it'll be very day to day and being mindful of what's coming up and then what we think are the biggest needs for the team.
Oh, one more, BMAC. Not to put you on the spot, we'll just remove some of the gray area for your fans. There's probably 3 types of information you give certain people. You give a timeline possibly to the player, you give a timeline possibly to the front office, and then you give a timeline possibly to the media and the fans. Can you tell me maybe the difference of those 3 timelines? Why they might say, how in the world can they say 6 to 8 weeks? I came back from, in 3 days from that.
I think even to our players sometimes when they hear
Protect ourselves from us.
Yeah, and obviously we, number one, don't necessarily want to overpromise anything, but the one thing that doesn't go back into it is when you're out for a long time, throwing progressions, running progressions, we have to build work capacity back up for guys, and we could easily put them back out on the field much, much quicker, but we're not setting them and ourselves up for success if we can't have that to be sustained. And then ultimately, as Brandon was talking, as we're thinking about the end of July and what we're going to do, we want to make sure that we have our group and our core ready for our run at the end of the year.
Brandon Gomes, last night we saw Tony Gonsolin pitch really well once again for you guys. I think 9-0 on the season. This is a man 3 weeks from tomorrow very well could be on that mound starting the All-Star game for the National League. What has stood out to you? Was any of this a surprise to you with how Tony Gonsolin has really emerged this season for you guys?
Watching Tony in the minor leagues, there was the foundation of a really good athlete and not a whole lot of innings under his belt. So, as he progressed and learned his delivery and put on weight, gained velocity, there was different steps in logging innings. And, at each turn, he's learning a little bit, and sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Last year, he dealt with the shoulder injury, I think, for most of the year, which was evident because if you look outside of his other years, that was the anomaly where he wasn't throwing strikes. So just this year, it just feels like there's some confidence. He's able to locate multiple pitches in the zone at any time. And I think that is what's most impressive right now is he's completely unpredictable to the hitter. And then you lay that on with a plus change-up, split change that he has. It makes it very difficult to square up. And he's just got a whole lot of confidence right now. And I think it's difficult to quantify. And Orel can speak to when you're confident, there's a lot of balls down the middle that get fouled off. So he's in a good place right now, and it's really fun to watch Tony pitch right now.
Yeah. B-Mac, could you speak to what he's done physically with his body and overcoming the shoulder issues and maybe in other ways that he's been able to get stronger so he could have success like this?
Yeah, and BG alluded to it too, just his physicality and how strong he was and how much weight he's put on. Just the athlete that we drafted was always there, and sometimes we have pitchers that need to develop those skills before they can come and take them out every fifth day in the big leagues. And I think Tony learned how to pitch. I think Tony learned how to prepare between days 1 through 4, which is, Orel, you can attest to this, is just an education in its own right. So it's really cool to see, obviously, his confidence go up with his success, but really he has an understanding of what he's doing throughout the week that's been super impressive.
Yeah, there's so much fun in throwing a bullpen, and you have to learn as a youngster that it's not about fun. It's about just being prepared for your next start, not overworking in between starts. There's so many things, especially fun in your department when you start to gain flexibility, you start to gain strength. All of a sudden, you have to have somebody by you to coach you through it because you want to keep getting stronger. You want to keep gaining flexibility, and you can actually get too strong and too loose. Are there guys in the off season that you can turn to Brandon Gomes and say, I think this guy's going to make a jump. The hip flexibility has changed. The ankles are working better now. The strength in these areas that we needed has come on.
I've been very fortunate to be here for 11 years now, and continuity, I think, is like one of the best things that's come with that. We've had the same strength and conditioning staff, a lot of the same medical staff now for almost a decade. And so we have a great idea going into the off season what guys need to work on, so we can give Brandon and Andrew and everybody else an idea of like, hey, we really think if these 2 or 3 things continue to trend in the right way over the next couple months, we're going to have something special, because when the physicality meets the skill, that's ultimately our best baseball player.
The second round of the All-Star voting came out today, BG, and I wanted to ask you, as we saw, Mookie Betts leading among right fielders, Trey Turner actually leading among all outfielders, and also Trey Turner leading at shortstop. Back in 1980, there were 4 Dodgers who started in the All-Star game for the National League. Who on this team, I know you can't play favorites and you can't take everyone, but who on this team would you really like to see make it here in 3 weeks?
Will Smith, I think, is
he's been standing out.
Probably one of the most underappreciated players in the game. You could argue he's the best all-around catcher right now. I think that's the way he goes about his business, very quiet, under the radar, conducts professional at-bats. I think it would be really cool to see him out there.
On the pitching side, you got a lot of candidates.
Well, Walker's on the shelf, so I think Tony's the obvious choice there, and then Tyler Anderson's been great. Kersh, it just continues to be Kersh when he's out there. So I think it's tough to say not Tony out of that group, but I think there's a lot of deserving candidates.
I think we've worn him out, John. I think we applaud him off the stage.
All right, Brandon Gomes, Brandon McDaniel, thank you both.
Thank you, guys.